Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Gotta Case of Wanderlust podcast. I'm with Vandana at Responsible Roamer on Instagram, who is a digital marketing specialist by profession and travel expert in Sri Lanka. Today, we will be chatting all about this beautiful island country just south of India, as well as Vandana's experiences living abroad in Pakistan, Sweden, and Denmark. So, with that, welcome to the show, Vandana.
So hi everyone, I'm Vandana. So as Lydia gave the introduction, I'm currently based in Sri Lanka, and I've lived in three countries. So I've lived in Pakistan, Sweden, and Denmark. And yeah, so I'm very excited to be on this podcast. So yeah, let's start.
Yay! So you've traveled to dozens of countries now, but what sparked your wanderlust?
What sparked my wanderlust? Actually, I think it started at a really young age because I'm very grateful for my parents because of that. Because they had always, we kind of made it a family tradition where we tried at least once a year to go somewhere, either for like family, like either we went to India or we just visited Nepal and Singapore, Malaysia. So whenever like my parents could, like we would go for like a family vacation within like actually during at least once a year. And I think that started sparking my interest for traveling and seeing different cultures, seeing different countries and so on. But I think my true wanderlust started when I was volunteering in India. So I worked for about 2 months at a school in Delhi, and that was where like it was the first time that I was living alone, and that's when I got my first feeling of solo travel because I had to basically like when I wanted to go see another place, I went alone. I booked my own tickets. I figured out my own budget. I booked my own accommodation and my hostels, and so that's the thing that really sparked my interest in solo traveling, in seeing the world and discovering new places. So I felt like it was always like inside me, but I think that was a moment that really like spark the change to actually go like what you call the wanderlust. So,
Okay, I feel like New Delhi, India, you mean? I feel like that's a pretty like intense place to start your solo travel experiences. But I don't know, like since you
yeah.
grew up in Sri Lanka, do you think it helped you get more accustomed or you were just more adjusted at that point to, that kind of culture? Or do you feel like growing up in Sri Lanka is different than India?
it's it's basically very very different. So the interesting thing is my mom is Indian, so she's from South India, and my father is Sri Lankan. So when I wanted to do this volunteer exchange, my initial idea was to go to Vietnam. I wanted to originally go to Vietnam, but then my mom was like, India's closest. I know India because I'm from India, so that's the only place you can go. If you're gonna go somewhere, you go to India. So so that's how like I ended up India for like the first time of solo traveling. But I feel like it's very different from Sri Lanka. It's kind of, I would say, Sri Lanka on steroids, to just put it nicely. So it's much more crazier. It's it's just basically like if you see like Sri Lanka, all the little like bad things about Sri Lanka, like for example, the very difficult driving in Sri Lanka, the lack of road rules, the horrible public transportation system, the fact that there's nothing comes like no transport comes on time. And if you see all the little bad things of Sri Lanka, they're probably 5, 10 times more in India. So if you're used to Sri Lanka, I think you can get used to India. But it's basically like if you don't like Sri Lanka, then I think India is definitely not the place for you because then it's just too much for you to actually like handle. So I think so I think like growing up, being born in Sri Lanka and everything, it actually made India much more easier to like travel and to experience. So so I think it's basic an experience at the end of the day. So right now I'm trying to convince my husband to like go to India again because he has been once and he had like a pretty like bad experience. So I've been trying to tell him like maybe like just try it, see it, it's gonna probably be different. And now that he lives in Sri Lanka, I think he might be more open for it and it might be much easier. So let's see.
Okay, I mean, yes, like you said, moving anywhere new is an adjustment for anyone, no matter how familiar you may be with the culture. It still changes surroundings, and yes, I get it. Um, so there's those differences. What similarities would you say exist between India and Sri Lanka?
Similarities between India and Sri Lanka. Okay, there are like actually, that's a bit of a difficult question because India is so large. But I would say that there are certain parts of India that look a lot like Sri Lanka. Like for example, there's part in the south called like Kerala, which is has a lot of it has a lot of palm trees, beaches. So whenever like I see pictures of Kerala and stuff, I automatically think, okay, this could be Sri Lanka because the beaches and stuff look exactly like. And also, Kerala cuisine is a lot like Sri Lanka cuisine because they use a lot of like coconut milk. They use a lot of uh, yeah. They also have like more rice, more curry based foods. So it's a lot similar to Sri Lanka in that sense, Kerala. And then if you think about the other part, which is like the Tamil part of Sri Lanka, of India, then that part is very similar to the north of Sri Lanka where most of the Tamil resides. So when you go to the north of Sri Lanka, it feels like you're in southern India because the religion is the same, the dressing is like the same, the language is the same, the temples are the same. So I think like Sri Lanka has like a little bit of similarity with India, but as a whole, if you look at it, I think it's quite different. Even though it comes under the misconception that Sri Lanka and India are very similar. And also one of the big differences is that everybody thinks that Sri Lankan and Indian food are the same or at least similar, but it's very different because of the fact that I feel like Indian food is more flavorful. They put more flavors into it. Whereas Sri Lankan food is just more spicy. It's just more like chili. So so I think that's one of like the biggest differences between India and Sri Lanka. But there is like a few similarities, but not as much as people think, at least in my opinion.
Right. That's so interesting. So yeah, I think there's a misconception that Sri Lanka is actually a part of India, but it's an entirely different country. I mean, like you said, the north part of Sri Lanka may be similar to South India because of the proximity, but I'm glad that you cleared up those distinctions. As far as the spiciness, I heard a couple like theories as to why the cuisine is so spicy. Do you know the exact reason?
Why it's so spicy? Funnily, like whenever I've also wondered that because I hate spice. Like I can't stand spicy.
That's so ironic,
It's
considering you grew up with that kind of food.
yeah. So I really can't. So there used to be a point where my mom had to basically make separate food for me because I couldn't eat her curries because they were too spicy. Just a fun fact, right? I've had relatives who can eat plain chilies. They can just literally take plain red chilies or green chilies and just eat it, just bite into it. And I don't know how they do it. But yeah, so funnily, the reason why I guess we like spicy food is that they say that with a hot climate, if you eat spicy food, it tends to cool down the body. So it sounds counterintuitive, but that's apparently the reason why we eat spicy food. So I really don't know how that works scientifically because I feel like if you're in a hot climate and you eat a spicy food, it just should make you hotter. But I guess it kind of does cool you down, so you don't feel that hot. I don't know. It's a bit strange.
It's definitely paradoxical because you don't intuitively think, oh, I'm like sweating my ass off, like I'm gonna go eat this spicy chili. But I'm not a scientist, but I think it's because like if you sweat, when the chilies make you sweat, it cools your body down from your body releasing that, I don't know, that
Yeah.
moisture. I
Yeah.
also heard it's a preservative for food. So if you put a lot of spices on
Mm.
it, it preserves it better in the heat. So those are two things that I've heard, but
Yeah.
it's not for everyone.
It's not for everyone though. But I guess even the point that you made about the sweating makes a lot of sense because then you just tend to sweat a lot. And that
Exactly.
happens. So
Exactly.
it cools you down. That's interesting though. Yeah.
So, what are some must try foods when we go to Sri Lanka? Like, what are some of your favorite dishes?
Ooh, you should try kottu roti. Kottu roti is to die for. So it's very simple. It's kind of you take roti, which is a sort of like flatbread, but it's a Sri Lankan type of roti. So we call it as godambara roti. And you just take that and then you basically just chop it up into tiny pieces and you take, for example, any vegetables, chicken, cheese, and you just mix it all up and you put like a chicken like gravy on it, and that's what you eat, and it's really really good. And I think the coolest thing about kottu is the way that it's done. So you have to say like if somebody making kottu because they literally just chop it up and it's like a little like dance with their hands when they like chop up the roti and they mix it up and it's really cool. So I think the one food that you have to try when you come to Sri Lanka is kottu roti. The other thing that I think you really have to try is hoppers. So they are little I really don't know how to describe hoppers, but they're basically made out of flour and they're little pancakes. But instead of like flat pancakes, they are risen pancakes, if that makes
They're
sense.
like puffs.
Yes. So they basically like there's a little like gooey bit in the middle, and then around it it's kind of like crispy, which you can just break off. So it's really tasty. And the middle you can have things like it can either be plain or you can have egg, you can have milk in it, and it's really really good. So I think those two are some of the must-try foods when you come to Sri Lanka.
Okay, that sounds delicious.
Yeah.
Besides the food, what are the must see cities or sites experiences in Sri Lanka?
The must-see sites. So that way, I think Sri Lanka is a really like lucky country because it's tiny, but you have a lot. You have a lot of diversity. So you have, for example, a lot of cultural sites. You have beautiful beaches. You have wildlife. So you have mountains as well. And the cool thing about Sri Lanka is you can go from one landscape to the other in a matter of hours, which I feel like a lot of countries like don't have that luxury. So, for example, you could just from Colombo, which is a city, you could travel for 1 hour and you'd be down at one of the most beautiful beaches. And then you travel up from Gaul for about 2 hours and then you would be in a rainforest or seeing leopards. So I think it's very like it's very easy and it's you have a lot of like diverse options. But some must-see sites in Sri Lanka would be Sikiriya. I know that's very cliche, but it's a ruins of a fortress that's built on top of this rock. So you basically have to climb to the top of this rock, and it's absolutely beautiful. So Sikiriya is like one of the must-see sites. And if you're into wildlife, then I really recommend you go and check out leopards because we have a national park called Yala, which has one of the highest leopard population densities in the world, I think. Yeah. So if you so yeah, so for leopards like Sri Lanka, and then I would also recommend you go down to Gaul, Mirisa, Siriketia. Those are like some of the best places to for the beaches. So I think Sri Lanka is a very nice destination for like depending on what you want to do because you can have a beach holiday, you can have a cultural tour, or you can just have a very chilled, relaxed vacation. So I think it just depends on what you're like looking for. But Sri Lanka has a lot to offer.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like a lot of things that you could do all in one pretty small
Yeah.
place. Like, how far does it take to get from one side to the opposite end of the island?
Um. So the usually it will take if you drive it takes about I think
about 8 to 9 hours to get from like the east, from mirror directions, from the west to the east, yeah. And also about 12 hours to get, about 12 to 13 hours to get from the south to the north. And that's mainly because the roads are not very like good. So you don't have like highways as such, except just in the south of Sri Lanka. So it would actually take much shorter times if there were better like connectivity and better roads. But then that's why it just usually takes that long to like travel up and down.
Okay. And would you
Yeah.
say like you could get around without renting a car, or like how do you get around the island?
So you have, in that sense, you have a lot of public transport. So you have buses, trains, and so on. But the problem is they take forever, because the thing is, like with our train system, right? Believe it or not, the Sri Lanka train system has not changed. We are still using the same trains, the same track that was used during the British times when we were colonized. So it's never been changed since then. So it's very so it's quite slow and stuff, right? But if you want that experience, it's very cheap, it's very affordable, and you can get from like A to B like easily with a train or with a bus. It's just that it takes much longer. But then if you just want the convenience, I think the car, like renting a car, makes sense. But if you want a true Sri Lankan experience, then I think the best would be you rent a tuk-tuk, and you can just drive a tuk-tuk like all over the island.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I really want to try tuk tuk. Like, I know they're popular in that side of the world, but I still haven't had that experience. It seems fun.
It's really cool though. It's really cool. It's very different because it's crazy, like the way they drive and stuff. So it's fun. You should try it once actually. Tuk tuk.
I definitely will. And then, so moving from Sri Lanka to the other places you've traveled, like what
Yeah.
made you decide to move abroad in the first place?
So I moved to Sweden because I got a scholarship there to start for my masters. So I moved. So I studied in Lund, which is in southern Sweden, very close to Denmark. So that was officially the first proper time that I left Sri Lanka. So without counting my 2 months of an exchange in Delhi, this was the proper time that I really, really moved like abroad. So it was, yeah, it was a very like lovely experience, and I really love like Sweden.
I feel like Sweden couldn't be more different than Sri Lanka. Like, what was your adjustment like?
I think at the beginning, the main difference with Sri Lanka and Sweden was that the people, because Sri Lanka is very like open and hospitable, even if they don't know you. So for example, like you could in Sri Lanka, right, you could just automatically even make like a personal connection with just a shopkeeper when you just go and buy something. And then before you know it, you're probably invited into his house for like a cup of tea. So everybody's just very friendly and open and warm and hospitable here, right? And that's something that I didn't really feel in Sweden, because it takes time with them to open up. But once you get close to them, they're very nice people. But then initially it just feels that they're very distant, and they're very I don't want to call it cold, but then yeah, just like very distant and very much to themselves. So I think that was the biggest first adjustment that I had to make. The second big adjustment I had, this sounds really, really funny, but the second big adjustment that I had was the fact that I saw so many bicycles when I was in Lund. Like everybody bicycling everywhere. And I was like, this is crazy. Because in Sri Lanka, nobody bicycles. You really, really don't. So that was also new. And believe it or not, pavements and walking paths and park. Because again, in the cities in Sri Lanka, like it's very deep. It's not made for walking. So you don't have a lot of walking paths. You don't have a lot of pavements. So the fact that I could actually walk from my accommodation to uni in Sweden and all that, it just felt really nice. So it was also, so those were like the little things that had adjustments. Oh yeah, and I have to mention this, cheese. Like I love cheese, and the fact that there was so much cheese in the supermarkets when I was like in Sweden, like I just couldn't believe it. I used to go crazy, like just buying like every single cheese I could find.
Cheese?
Cheese, yeah, cheese.
What kind of cheese?
Um, so like everything, right? I think like all the Gouda, the cheddar, the mozzarella, like everything, every single cheese, Parmesan. Because in Sri Lanka, the only thing where you get in the supermarkets is just plain cheese slices that you put on toast. So I used to think, yeah, that's cheese. And then I came to like a supermarket in Sweden that was just full with different types of cheese, and I was like, I'm in cheese heaven. So yeah.
That's funny. I didn't know Sweden was known for cheese, but I mean, everything there is really good quality. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I feel like they're known for cheese, or just that I think they had a lot of like cheese in supermarkets, but I don't think they're actually known for cheese in that sense, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. It was just
Yeah.
like a special experience for you. I love that.
Yes. Yeah.
And then what about moving to Denmark and Pakistan?
So basically, like, yeah. So Pakistan, I lived there when I think until I was about 13. So I was in Pakistan basically from the time I moved there when I was 9 and I until 13. So I was in Pakistan for about 4 years, yeah. Because my father got a job in Pakistan. So we were living in Islamabad for 3 years and then we moved to the other bigger city, Karachi. So Pakistan was also a very different experience. So I was quite young then, right? But I remember there were some significant things in Pakistan where I realized that um, I remember people also being very very open and very hospitable, very friendly, and it was generally like a really nice experience. So, but the one thing that stood out for me in Pakistan was food. Like Pakistani food was very good, and the other thing that really like that I loved about Pakistan were the mountains. Because like till today, I still have like the best memories of Pakistan are the photos and the memories of me being in the mountains because it's all like on the foothills of the Himalayas and so on, right? So it's absolutely like out of this world. So I think if you're really like adventurous, I think that Pakistan also should be on your list. I also want to go there at some point now, see how different it is compared to 10 years ago. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I've heard really good things about Pakistan, and I'd be very curious about going there myself. As a like solo female traveler, like, what do you have any specific advice before traveling to somewhere like there, or is it really no different than anywhere else, you think?
Um, I think the thing is that you need to have, I know it's easier said than done, but I think you need to have common sense. Because for me, it's all about just being smart and just using your brains for like situations. Like, for example, always just really simple stuff, right? Because these are things that I follow as a solo female traveler. Like, whenever I do go for solo trips, it's just that, for example, I never stay out late. I don't really like, I like partying and stuff, but I like partying, for example, with like friends or people who I know. But then if I go out like solo traveling, right, I would just prefer like maybe going down to a bar like that is close by to my hotel so that I know I can leave at any time. I know I'm close to like a safe space and I don't go out partying till late. Or like I always share my location with friends, like where I am, what am I doing, what am I going to see. And it's just I think if you follow like those rules anywhere around the world, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's Europe, whether it's South America, I think you're going to be fine. Because and the thing is like you just shouldn't put yourself in like a bit of like compromising like situations, right? For example, like if you see like dark, you're walking alone like in the night in some country, right? And you see like a dark alley, like don't walk down it because I wouldn't do it in Colombo also. Like, just don't. So I think that's my this thing. I think the main thing with like solo travel, I think you can do it like anywhere. It's just like you have to just use your common sense, like that you would do on a normal day-to-day basis.
I 100% echo that. Common sense is definitely important. It's an important thing to have when you travel.
Yeah.
But I think I definitely would stand by what you said. Like as long as you keep your wits about you, you make smart choices as you would at home versus if you're in a foreign country, you could really travel anywhere. It doesn't matter if you're a female or a male. There's ultimately like safe places in some destinations and more dangerous places in certain places, and it's really just about being smart, like you said,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
avoiding a whole country just because of what you heard.
Yeah, exactly. So that I don't think like you should do. So I think you can just travel like anywhere, like just as long as you're smart and you're safe about it. I think any country's like not out of bounds. So I think even places like Pakistan and what you would technically deem as being very unsafe, I think they're actually not as bad as people make it out to seem, to be honest. So because for example, like funnily, right? I don't know whether anybody you share that experience, but I found, for example, Italy, especially Milan, like a lot more like unsafe than, for example, like I find like places like Bangkok and stuff. So I don't know whether it's just person to person and it just depends on like everything. But then I feel like sometimes like because in my head being Sri Lankan, everybody used to say that yeah, like Europe is like so safe, right? And I remember I went the first time to Italy and to Milan. And I actually found it quite a bit like unsafe and a bit like uneasy sometimes. And so I was just wondering. But then when I went like solo traveling to Bangkok, which everybody said, yeah, don't go, like don't even step into Bangkok, it's so unsafe and stuff. I just loved it. It was just very like safe. I just felt like so much more comfortable. So I, I think it just depends on like how you perceive the place as well. So
Yeah, that's a perfect testament that safety is subjective. It really just
yeah,
depends on the individual, your own comfort levels, your own background, and whatnot. So, yeah, that's a really good thing to point out. And yeah, Milan wasn't my favorite city. I definitely felt the most unsafe there throughout my whole like European backpacking trip.
yeah,
So I would I
yeah.
would I would echo that. Um, but as far as maybe your next dream destination, what would that be?
The next dream destination. Ah, I think I really want to go to. I really want to go to Egypt. I always want to go to Egypt, and I'm really thinking of trying going to like Philippines at some point. Those two, I
Ooh,
think, on mine.
okay, that'd be so cool. And
Yeah.
then, what is a memorable meal you've had when traveling?
A memorable moment.
A memorable meal, like something you
A
ate.
memorable meal. Okay. A memorable meal. Oh yeah. I visited Georgia. Georgia is like the country, right? And they have this meal there called kachapuri, and I think that's one of the best foods I've ever had. And I've never like had it again ever since like leaving. And there are some days when I just really want kachapuri, but I don't know where to get it.
I love Georgian food. I'm like obsessed because it's like a carb lover's paradise as far as cuisine goes. Like khachapuri is
Yes.
like a cheese boat bread sort of
Yeah.
dish. Yeah, it's
It's
incredible.
it's incredible. Like I love that. I love the food there. It was like you said, Leah. Kabla was like dream, like, and I love the country. So it, I think that was like one of my favorite meals. Sometimes I have dreams like thinking about it.
Oh my gosh. And yeah, I honestly dreamed the same. Like bread are definitely consumes most of my headspace. And then what would be your special like a special destination place in your heart besides Georgia, like you said?
Special, special place in my heart. I think it's Thailand. Thailand, Copenhagen. Yeah, like I like that island like holds a lot of like special memories and yeah, and it's also like one of the first trips that I did with my now husband. So I think that is one of the most memorable places for me, like Copenhagen.
Okay, I gotta make it to Thailand eventually. I really want to go.
You haven't been to Thailand yet?
No, I want to so bad.
Oh my God, you should. It's beautiful.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us? Where can we find you?
So you can basically find me on Instagram, or you can find me on Thatch, where I upload a lot of travel guides.
Okay.
So there I go as a responsible roamer. So yeah, you can find me there.
Okay, perfect. I'll definitely link that in the show notes. Well, thank you so much for your time again.
Of course. Thank you so much as well, and I'm really sorry about before.
Thank you so much for listening to the Got a Case of Wanderlust podcast. Again, my name is Lydia, and you can find me on social media in the About section of this podcast. Please rate and review if you found value or insight from this, and I hope to see you in the next episode.